What's going on, everybody? My name is Nick.
And my name is Dave.
And this is the Deep Dive, and we are here at the end of Ruth, the 4th chapter. You've been hyping this up for the last couple of weeks. You said it's about to get good.
Yeah, you don't think the rest of it has been good?
No, it's been good. It's been good. But you've been hyping this up,
We just
Dave.
ended on a cliffhanger last week.
That's right.
We left it on a cliffhanger. But yeah. No,
you've been excited for this.
It's a beautiful story. It's a simple story, a beautiful story, and it does end well.
Yes.
Particularly with the story arc of where it begins.
Yeah.
It just has a beautiful, restoration and redemption.
Yeah. It's a beautiful story from kind of sadness and despair to redemption, like you said.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We'll talk into it more. Let's jump in, shall we?
Okay, let's do it.
Well, Dave, I know we're not a sports podcast. We never have been, but I think we'd be.
Well, we are some a little bit.
We do talk maybe a little more than we should, but it is football. College football is starting this week.
Georgia is playing Mighty Marshall. And Kendall Sherrill has an extra ticket.
I know.
And
I was trying to figure it out, but I
would have gone, but I've got a rehearsal with the choir for Sunday.
Big Sunday.
Yeah, because it's at 3:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah, I've got volleyball and all that stuff.
And I can't do Saturday night games at Georgia. I've tried it a couple of times, and I just get in too late for it. And I'm no good on Sunday morning. So
no amount of coffee would help you bounce back?
Well, maybe a little bit. I don't know. But anyway, I would have gone, but hopefully he'll offer again. So,
I know. But anyway, I'm excited. It's kind of, I don't know, the weather outside feels a little bit like fall right now. Fall's my favorite season. So I'm just ready to kind of get into this next space of it's a great sports time, great
September's going to be here. I mean, it's a week away.
I know. It's wild.
It's a week from yesterday.
But Georgia's got 27 seasons, and we're in fake fall at this point. So we'll have a return of the summer, and then maybe we'll get back to fall.
Sure. All right.
Well, Dave, why don't we jump into it? Like I said, we're hitting Ruth chapter 4.
All right.
And take it away.
So where we left off, okay, just very quick synopsis.
Last time on the deep dive.
Yeah, a very quick synopsis. Okay, so if, and I'm guessing that people who are following the podcast have been tracking along, but if you just stumbled upon this. It's the story of Ruth. It's 4 chapters long. In chapter 1, it starts off with this woman, Naomi, and her husband, who are living in Bethlehem, and times get really hard. It's a bad famine. And so they have to go somewhere else to try to get provisions. So they take off to Moab, which is an interesting thing. We'll talk about that a little bit later too. But they go to Moab, and they get there, and Elimelech, the husband, dies, which is a terrible thing. And so things are going bad to worse. But she does have her 2 sons, who are marrying age sons who are there, and they can support her. And so they're, it doesn't give a lot of detail of how they're getting by with their existence, but we do know that they meet Moabite women. The 2 sons do. They marry them, and then a few years later they die. Yep. And so now Naomi is there with these 2 daughter-in-laws who are also widows, and as we've said many, many times, being a widow in these biblical times is a very, very difficult thing. Yep. Women depended almost entirely on their men for, their livelihood. And so her options are few, so she decides to go back to Bethlehem, to go back to Israel. And so, and she begs her daughter-in-laws, y'all stay here, even though they loved each other. And that's real clear in the text. I love talking about that part, about this beautiful love that these 3 women had for one another. But one of them does go back, but Ruth, who is the hero of our story, and who the book is named after.
Convenient.
Goes with her.
Right.
And so they get back, and then immediately they've got to try to find ways to get by there. So Ruth goes out in this field to glean with the leftover harvest that's happening, the barley harvest. And she meets Boaz, who becomes our other major character in the story. He notices her and has heard what she did for her mother-in-law. And so he makes sure that she's taken really well care of.
Yep.
Yeah. And she goes home, tells Naomi that she has met Boaz. And she says, oh my gosh, that is a distant relative of ours. In fact, he is a guardian redeemer, which becomes a big word for us in the study of ours. And so that's kind of where we get to the end of chapter 2. And then in chapter 3, she goes down at Naomi's urging. She goes down essentially to ask Boaz to step in and do the things that he would need to be their guardian redeemer, which we'll unpack as we now get into chapter 4.
Yep.
One more thing. So he says, essentially just this isn't the text, but, asking him to cover them to be the guardian redeemer.
Right.
He said, I will do this thing, but I'm not the closest relative. I'm not the next in line. And so I've got to check that out with him. Showing integrity, and we spent a lot of time,
right.
the last podcast, talking about doing the right things in the right way. And so that's where we ended up last week, that we don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
We kind of do, but we don't know what's going to happen next. So chapter 4 begins with him doing this thing. Mm-hmm. He gets that next in line person together with 10 other elders, and he says this, which was a hard stop in the sermon, because he says that Naomi has land to sell. And since you are the next in line, you have the first dibs on this, which is a hard stop, because for 3 weeks I've been telling everybody how destitute they were.
Yeah,
and if I was sitting, if I didn't know the story, and if I was sitting out in the congregation, it's like, what do you mean she's got land?
Yeah.
You said that she was a destitute widow. And so we talked a good bit in the service about how, or not a good bit, that was
a little bit,
maybe a little bit, that she could kind of, the land, first of all, with Jewish law at that time, particularly in ancient Israel, they didn't think about it as individual ownership. It was everything was God's.
Yeah.
But they did have stewardship of the land, and it belonged to that family, whoever had it, and it could be passed down. It was passed down through the male generations. If hard times fell, you could lease out the land, but you always had the choice of redeeming it back, of buying it back. That was the deal. She could not do that as a woman. She could sort of serve as this proxy. And so, yes, it says that, but it wasn't actually that she had this land like we would think of today that she could have either leased out or
So it wasn't necessarily for like living, just solely for living on. It was kind of to make a living from, right? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well,
like to lease it out as it's more like a
she couldn't even
business
do
piece?
that. I don't think.
Okay.
I don't think she could do that. But but as a proxy, because she was the widower, and then she had Ruth. Ruth would have been part of the deal because she was the widow of the son who would have been an heir.
Right.
And so he tells this to this guy, and the guy says, "Okay, I'll do it." All right. And then he says, "Oh, by the way,
you got to marry somebody."
Yeah, Ruth comes to the deal, and he says, I can't do that. That would jeopardize my estate to do that." And so then there was another hard stop. Why would this guy want to marry Ruth? Because we've spent 3 weeks and 3 chapters talking about what a wonderful person she was and how much integrity she had and how beautiful she was. But she was a Moabite.
Yeah.
And Moabite women with Jews don't have a great reputation. And there's a story that I actually... Remember when I did that Stranger Things series and we talked about the talking donkey? So that was Balaam and the donkey. And what it was is this King Balak, who was the Moabite king, had tried to get Balaam to come in and do this curse. And, that's a whole thing I won't go into because I preached a sermon on it. But, it didn't really work.
Yeah.
But he was trying to curse the Israelites. This is why they were out in the desert wandering. But what does happen is the Moabite women come in and they seduce the Israeli men and they start worshiping other gods. And so it's a really bad chapter. So at the very least, there's a couple of reasons. One, that he might not wanted to do it. He might have thought, well, if we have an heir, that dilutes it for my real children, my biological children.
Yeah.
But I have a sense that it was because of the stigma that it might put him about marrying a Moabite woman.
Yeah. Could be a little bit of all of it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then Boaz steps in.
Says he'll do it.
He says he'll do it.
Yeah.
And they have remember the weird way in which they do real estate deals back then?
The sandal, right?
Sandal.
They hand the sandal over.
Isn't that weird?
It is weird.
That's weird.
You were talking about, I've done the refinancing stuff with the house and all that. And as you were talking, because in service, he brought up Would you rather sign these 3,000 pieces of paper or hand over a sandal? I was like, man, that sandal would have been great to hand over.
Yeah.
I got a few I could have handed.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. But so they make this deal, and so then he does marry Naomi. No, he doesn't marry Naomi. He marries Ruth.
Yes.
And they have a child. And so the story ends, I think, so beautifully because we started out with Naomi having all this bad stuff happen to her, and she's blaming God.
Yeah.
She comes back and she says, "Call me Mara. I am bitter."
Yeah.
And then in the end, this last thing we've seen is she is holding Obed, who's a baby. And, you can only imagine Ruth being there. And just this beautiful scene about how God sort of redeemed this difficult situation. And how God was really tracking with her all along.
Yeah.
Remember back in chapter 1, it says when she came back, she said, call me Mara, I'm bitter, I went away full, now I'm empty. But she wasn't empty because she had Ruth.
Right.
This loyal person beside her. And, there's also that little hint of the barley harvest was starting. So, the barley in the Old Testament a lot, and actually some in the New Testament, it is a sign or symbol of God's restoration.
Yeah.
God's,
providence or provision, stuff like that. God's
provision, better way of saying it.
Yeah.
And so, so what can we learn from this? I mean, in some ways, it's a simple story, but it's one that I think people always go back to. Talk about Ruth a lot because it's so beautiful.
Yeah, I know you had kind of a couple points that we'll get to in the sermon, but as I've kind of been re-going through this story, I think what's so. And I don't know how to say this well, so I'm just going to throw it out there. But I think what's so cool kind of about it is there's so many stories of God doing these extraordinary things for people, seas being parted, amounts of food coming out of small amounts and stuff like you've got all these things. But in this story, it's kind of watching these people going through their normal life, but being faithful in God and seeing how God kind of worked. There was nothing huge. Yeah. This was kind of people just doing the right thing in front of them, following through with their normal life. I mean, would you say that's true?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that's a perfect example. We've talked about that. I think, the steps, they're just faithful steps of doing the next right thing. Yeah. And as we just see over and over with Ruth, of doing the next right thing. She makes this huge sacrificial, gesture of going back with Naomi and saying, "No, I'm committed to you. Your people will be my people." So, that could be looked at as huge. That was a huge turning point for her. But once she gets back, going down to the fields to try to, that's what you do. Yeah. You gotta eat.
Yeah. Just trying to get some food.
And then just being a person of integrity and doing the right thing and people noticing it and people saying, "Hey, this is the woman that came back with Naomi." Yeah. And she didn't have to, but she's back. And, she's been here, she's been working hard all morning. Yeah. And Boaz notices that, that, I think it's an excellent point with the big stuff. I will say, your second example of that, there was a faithfulness in there too, because the 5 loaves and 2 fishes was just somebody being
true.
That's faithful. And then God,
but there's that multiplication part of the story.
I get the point. I'm not teasing you on that. But I'm just saying. But that is an example of just doing the right thing. And so that's what we see. What gets pointed out a lot about this scripture, and I think it's really one of the big points, is that Boaz is in some ways sort of foreshadowing Christ, in that something they could not do for themselves. He steps in as a guardian redeemer, or sometimes called kinsman redeemer. Yeah. He steps into that place and does that, and not thinking of himself like the first guy did. Like, how is this going to affect me? Boaz says, "No, I'm willing to do this regardless of what it costs me." Yeah. And so that is very much a foreshadowing of a Christ figure there, of Christ redeeming us, Christ restoring us. And so I like that part of it, that example as well. And the other thing is that out of this this faithfulness, and is God restoring things like Israel and the Moabites had a very long and complicated relationship. They actually are related. That's another sermon from another time. Distantly related, huge falling out. They didn't go to family reunions together.
Yeah.
But and so they have been at war and skirmishes and all this stuff. But God kind of restores that brokenness in Ruth and this lineage, because you look at the lineage of David, you look at and then the lineage of Christ, and who shows up in there but Ruth and Boaz.
Yeah.
They're part of that. And so God taking, imperfect, people and, and working out his redemption and hope through that too.
Yeah, I mean, that's the continuous story in the Bible, right? Like, these are all these stories that we hear of people who either were inadequate or empty or whatever, and God uses them to continue his plan and his purpose.
God, this is another point on Sunday, but God using imperfect people. Mm-hmm. When Boaz finally says he's going to do that, those other elders gave a blessing, and they said, may they be like Rachel and Leah, or Tamar.
Yeah.
And so I told the story of them on Sunday, but like those were imperfect people.
Yeah.
That whole Rachel and that was a crazy mixed up, and there was lots of rivalry and competition and all this stuff. But the Tamar in particularly, who ends up disguising herself as a prostitute.
Yeah.
But yet out of that came Perez, who ended up being David's grandfather, I think, or at least in the lineages as well. So that God uses our messed up, imperfect, sometimes making bad decisions, and still can turn them around and work it out and restore it.
Right, and that's such a beautiful thing for us, because I know, been in youth ministry for a while, but also just been in ministry for a while. A lot of the common themes you hear from people, even in the small ways, are, I don't feel good enough to be the person who prays out loud. I don't want to be the person who steps on anybody's toes, or I'm afraid to share my faith outside of church because I don't know what this shows, like, as long as we're doing what we think God's calling us to do, like, there's going to be reward, or not reward, because that's basically like it's
we can trust God.
Yeah.
We can, as we're doing, like, we may not be able to trace his hand at times, but we can trust God's heart.
And we're all worthy of being used.
That if we keep doing the next right thing, that God hasn't deserted us, and that we're going to eventually be able to see how this road worked.
Yeah.
Like for Naomi to get to this point, she, I'm sure, as any of us would have been, felt very lonely and felt God had deserted her at those times. It's understandable, but hanging in there and seeing the whole story arc, you can see how it ends up with this joyful, beautiful scene.
Yeah. For sure. Well, Dave, I think that's just a real good way to wrap this story up. I mean, it sums up really the overarching theme of Ruth here, is just this idea of continuously being faithful, and even maybe in times where we're not feeling it, or we feel empty ourselves, but just continuously trying to do those next right things, which is a common thread we talk about here. Is just that next right step, that next right thing.
It does seem to be.
But I think that's important to keep that in front of us, because I think we think so far ahead sometimes in our faith journeys that we're not just focused on what's the opportunity right in front of me right now. We think too far, and I think God's working in our steps right here, right now, where we're at. Right now, talking on this podcast, there's something that maybe we need to get from God right here.
Right. Well, and we're fixing to launch into some things this fall, and not really sure where they're going, but there's a lot of great opportunities for ministry and to get connected. This is my attempt as a segue here. But this Sunday, we have an opportunity to kind of connect and fellowship as we get together for a very special Sunday.
Southern Fried Sunday.
Southern Fried Sunday, going to have a lot of good music, going to have a lot of good food and fellowship. And, so hope to see people there.
Yeah.
I know it's Labor Day weekend.
Yeah.
I know it is, but
it'll still be fun.
It'll still be fun.
A good fifth Sunday, so there'll be a good potluck after a great service. I will say, just for planning's sake, if you haven't signed up yet and you're watching this, go ahead and get signed up just so we can make sure we've got enough.
Gotta get enough chicken. Yeah.
Gotta get enough chicken. Gotta make sure we got enough plates, all that good stuff. We just love to have you there for the fellowship more so than anything, though. But Dave, so we got Southern Fried Sunday. Do you want to kind of preview what's after that?
We'll wait.
Okay.
We'll wait. Let that be a surprise.
Sounds good.
We're gonna run a trailer this Sunday. So you have to either watch online or see it. But we'll run a trailer of what's coming in September. So got a new series coming up. That's gonna be good.
Right on. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you got any comments, any questions, you can drop it in the comment section below on the Facebook, YouTube, wherever you're watching this from. And without any further ado, Dave, anything?
Nope. God bless.
God bless you guys. We'll catch you next time.
Right.